Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to thank the Penn State University Mine Trainers Association for inviting me here. I appreciate any opportunity to be able to talk about the work that we're doing at NIOSH, and especially this project in particular, because I do think it's very important. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the Assessing the Safety Culture of Mines project that I'm the principal investigator of. And I did want to take this opportunity just to acknowledge some of my research team members that have participated in the project so far, Bob Peters and Kat Kingsley Westerman, for their tireless efforts. So today what I'm going to be focusing on is I'm going to tell you a little bit about the project, mainly what we're doing to actually assess safety culture, so the actual methods that we're using. And then I'm going to give you some preliminary results. So I'm going to jump right in and just give you some background about the project. This is a NIOSH-sponsored research study, and our goal for this study is to explore and evaluate the safety culture of the underground coal mining industry. To do this, we are looking for approximately 6 mines to participate and let us come into their mines and do an extensive safety culture assessment. We're about halfway through the project so far. We've conducted these assessments at 3 coal mines, and I'm going to actually take this opportunity to make a small pitch. We have 3 more mines to conduct assessments at, but we don't have mines that are willing to participate yet. So if you happen to work for a mine that you think has an extremely good safety culture and you think that we could learn a lot from you, we would appreciate the opportunity to come in. If you work for a mine that you think maybe could use some improvement, we'd be happy to come in and do the assessment and give you suggestions for where you could improve. And if you happen to work in a mine where you just don't really know where you stand and you don't want to pay a contractor tens of thousands of dollars, we'll come in and do it for free. We have contracted with, NIOSH has contracted with Human Performance Analysis. It's a contractor who has specialized in conducting safety culture assessments in primarily the nuclear power industry, but also other industries in the past, for the past 25 years. So the nuclear power industry, construction, healthcare, industries such as that. And what they have provided us with are their assessment tools that are reliable and valid. At the end of this project, what we will be doing is producing a cumulative report to the underground mining industry, giving findings, some things that we found that mines that have strong safety cultures, some of their characteristics, but also characteristics that we think could be improved across the mining industry. We also, every time we go into a mine and conduct a safety culture assessment, we give that mine back an individualized safety culture assessment report. So we take the time to go back to the mine and spend time with the mine management and tell them what we've observed and give them suggestions for improving. Also, at the end of the project, we are going to produce a safety culture assessment toolkit. Basically, because we are a government organization, everything that we conduct, all the tools that we use, we make that public property at the end of the project. So if you're willing to wait until the end of the project, we will be making all of our assessment tools public property. So you'll be able to use all of the surveys and the interview questions and everything that we used. We're going to make that available. So before I talk any more about the project, I want to start by saying, what is safety culture? I know we've talked a lot about that today, but I think it's important that you know what we use at NIOSH as our definition of safety culture and the definition that is guiding this research. So the definition that we use is safety culture refers to the characteristics of the work environment, such as the values, rules, and common understandings that influence employees' perceptions and attitudes about the importance the organization places on safety. And you'll notice that I italicized the words perceptions and attitudes. And what we really strive to do is understand employees' perceptions and attitudes, because that we know that perceptions and attitudes guide behavior. We know that if a miner goes to work and they have the attitude or they have the perception that their organization places a great deal of importance and they have they value safety to a great deal, that when they work throughout their shift, they're going to have that in the back of their mind and they're going to work safely. We also know that if a miner goes to work and they have the attitude or the perception that their organization does not value safety, no matter what they may say, they're going to have that in the back of their head, and they're going to make unsafe decisions when they're working. To get a little bit more in depth into safety culture and what guides our assessments, there are 6 safety culture characteristics that we look for when we conduct a safety culture assessment. And I'm going to go through each one of them briefly. The first thing that we look for when we're trying to determine the safety culture of a mine is that safety is a clearly recognized value. Okay? So when we're talking to people, all the way from your hourly employee up to the mine superintendent, even at the corporate level, we're looking for people to tell us that this organization and the workers in this organization value safety. Another thing that we look for is that accountability for safety is clear. We want to know that everyone thinks that it is their responsibility to be safe and that they are accountable for safety. We also look to see if safety is integrated into all activities at the mine. And this doesn't just mean work activities underground. This is everything from when an employee drives onto mine property. Are they obeying speed limits? How are they acting in the change room, in the shower room? Are they horsing around? All the way down to the underground activities and the surface activities that involve production. We also look for a safety leadership process. Are the leaders at the mine, all the way from the mine superintendent to shift foreman, section foreman, even those unofficial leaders that show up in work groups, are those leaders at the mine safe leaders? Are they leading in a safe way? And we look to see if safety culture is learning driven at the mine. And what I mean by this is the organization using their past experiences to learn from and to improve on their future behavior and their future performance. So are they learning from their near misses? Are they learning from their successes and the failures in the past so that they don't make the same mistakes over and over and over again? And finally, we look for what we call SQUE, a process for establishing a strong and effective safety-conscious work environment. Now, a safety-conscious work environment is one in which individuals feel free to raise concerns of any type without the fear of reprisal. So we look and see if all of your workers at the mine feel that they can approach their management with concerns, safety concerns, work concerns, without the fear that they're going to be reprimanded or there's going to be some sort of retribution for raising those concerns. Now, I've listed all of the 6 safety culture characteristics that we look for, but you're probably thinking to yourself, well, how do you go about finding out if those characteristics are in place at a mine? Well, there's a huge list of behaviors that we can hone in on and look for when we're on site conducting a safety culture assessment. The list of behaviors that I have up there looks a little daunting, and I will honestly say that we cannot, during a safety culture assessment, assess each and every one of those behaviors. But what we do is we select about 8 to 10 of those behaviors to focus on while we're on site. And I'll get into it in just a few slides, how we determine which behaviors that we think we need to focus on when we're doing a safety culture assessment. So I gave you 6 safety culture characteristics, and I gave you this huge list of behaviors that we can look at to determine whether or not the safety culture characteristics are in place at the mine. But I also wanted to show you this chart to let you know that the behaviors align with the characteristics. So if we're looking to assess the safety culture characteristics, safety is clearly recognized value, we're actually going to look for behaviors at the mine such as attention to safety and decision making and goal setting. So we can pick and choose and make sure that we're looking for behaviors that cover each of the characteristics. So now that I've told you a brief overview of what safety culture is and what guides our research, I wanted to answer the question that you might be asking yourself: why should we assess safety culture? And my first answer to that is I'm using this quote from Bruce Watzman, and he said that perhaps the most important element in improving safety is the relentless focus on safety culture. In those companies with outstanding safety performance, safety is emphasized at every shift at the mines and is an integral part of the business model. So you can't be safe unless you have a great safety culture. But this still doesn't really answer the question of why I should assess my safety culture. So I have some more answers to that question. First and foremost, conducting a safety culture assessment at your mine will enhance your safety culture, because you as mine management are saying to your miners, we care enough about safety culture to invest the time and the energy to assess it. So just by conducting the assessment, you can actually be improving your safety culture, because you're showing your miners that safety is a value. Another reason why you should assess safety culture is because mine management often have misperceptions about the strength or the weaknesses of the safety culture at their mine. Another thing to keep in mind when you are considering whether or not to have a safety culture assessment done is that the safety culture assessment team will provide you with results, and they will give you suggestions on areas of strengths and weakness where you can either you need to address the weaknesses, or you can continue to focus to continually improve your safety culture. And finally, it's important to assess your safety culture, because before you can improve something, you have to do a base level assessment so you know if you're improving or not. So I told you what safety culture is and why you should assess it, and for the next section of the presentation, I want to tell you a little bit about how we at NIOSH are going about conducting these safety culture assessments. First and foremost, we use a multi-method data collection. So we actually use 5 different data collection tools when we're on site, and the goal of using 5 different data collection tools is to have triangulation. And triangulation occurs when you use 2 or more methods to obtain the same results. And if you use 2 or more methods and you do obtain the same results, you can be more confident in those results, because you're not relying just on a survey and you're not relying just on interviews. You're using both a survey and the interview, and you're comparing the information that you get from those 2 methods, and you're making sure that you're getting the same results. So some of the methods that we use, and I'm going to go in a little bit more depth for each one of these methods. We use a functional analysis, which is basically a document analysis. We use interviews and sometimes focus groups. We try to stay away from focus groups because we tend to get groupthink that occurs in focus groups, but if we can't get enough interviews done, we will use a focus group now and then. We use something called a behavioral anchored rating scale, and I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. We use behavioral observations, and we administer an organizational and safety culture survey. That's a pencil and paper survey. And just to give you a little idea about how in-depth and involved the safety culture assessments are, I typically take a team of 5 to 8 safety culture assessment team members and to the mine, and the team consists of research scientists and mining engineers, and we can spend anywhere from 5 to 15 days at a mine site conducting the assessment. It really depends, the length of time we're there depends on the size of the mine as well as the access that we're given to the miners. So I'm going to go a little bit more in depth about each of the methods that we use so you can get an idea of what we're doing. The first method that we use is called a functional analysis, and I sort of gave you a preview of this. I said it's basically a document review. What we do is we ask, before we even step foot on the mine site, we ask the mine to provide us with any documents that they have in existence that they think would be relevant to their safety culture and would give us some idea of what their safety culture is. So what we're asking for is training materials, employee handbooks, safety policies, anything like that. And we review these documents and we go over them before we even step foot on site. There's reasons that we do this. We want to get a snapshot of what we're going to experience before we're there, before we get there. It also helps us identify areas that we think maybe the mine may be excelling in or needs some improvement in. And so once we're on site, we can look more in depth into those areas. Also, it's low cost and it's low involvement from the mine. It's pretty easy for them to just hand over some materials and we get to spend all of our time, and it doesn't really ask anything of the mine. There are some weaknesses to this method, however. Basically, it's a historical perspective. I mean, we've been given handbooks dated 1996, and we're in the year 2010. So we don't know necessarily from those documents that they give us what is going on at the mine in current day, because it's kind of a historical perspective of what they have. And because of this, the insights that we can gain from this functional analysis are only as good as the documents that the mine provides us. So if they provide us with outdated documents or they don't give us a lot of documents, we're not going to get a lot of insight from this process. But it is important that we conduct this method because I showed you before that long list of organizational behaviors. The documentation review helps us choose what organizational behaviors we want to focus on when we get to the mine. So if we ask for some documents from the mine and they give us nothing about training, we might say, hey, we don't have any idea what sort of training activities go on at this mine, other than just the regular mandated training. So we might want to look into training when we're there. So we know that that's a behavior that we want to focus on and we want to talk to employees about when we get to the mine. So that's really what we use the functional analysis for. The second method that we use, and all the methods from here on out are methods that we employ when we're at the mine site, actually conducting the assessment. The second method we use are interviews. When we get to the mine site, we like to interview 10 to 20% of the employee population. So if you have a 500 employee mine, we ask for a sample of between 50 and 100 employees. I usually shoot for somewhere right in the middle. And we like to take a cross-section of employees. So we like to get representatives all the way up from senior management all the way down to your hourly employees. And what happens is I will supply the mine with a list of job categories that we would like to speak to. So I'll give you a list of 75 things, and I might say, you know what, I want to talk to 5 scoop operators. I want to talk to 10 continuous miner operators. I want to talk to the longwall shearer operator. I will give you a list of jobs, and that'll include everyone from the mine superintendent. I'll ask for some shift supervisors. I'll ask for section foremen. I give you a list of the job categories that we want to talk to, and it's the mine's responsibility to supply me with people that have or hold those jobs. Now, I know what you're thinking. Probably red flags are going up in your head right now, and you're saying, you let the mine pick the people that you talk to. And there are some concerns with this. Number one is confidentiality, because they're handpicking. They know who they're sending to me to be interviewed. We do assure confidentiality to our interviewees because we tell them that we are interviewing multiple people in each position. So they're not going to be the only scoop operator that we talk to. We're going to talk to a few of them. And also in the report we give back to mine management, it's a big cumulative report. So we're combining the interview responses from every interviewee we talk to. So their responses are going to be compiled with 50 other people's responses. And it's really difficult to pick out any one person's statement. You might also be concerned that we let the mind pick the employees, because you're probably thinking, well, of course, they're only going to pick the best workers and the people that are most satisfied and the happiest and the son of the superintendent, and they're just going to tell you good things. And I can tell you right now that if any mind has tried to do that yet, they have been unsuccessful, because we always find people that will give us the nitty-gritty. And there's always someone that's going to tell us something that isn't picture perfect. And then what do we do as good social scientists that Tom was wrinkling his nose at during his presentation? We hear those nitty-gritty things, and then we start to dig deeper in the interviews. So once we start to hear things, we start to look for them, and we ask about them, and we verify them. So even if someone came in and said, I'm not going to tell them anything bad, I'm going to give them the picture-perfect description, we know how to ask questions to figure out what's really going on at the mine site. And sometimes things aren't all that bad, but if it's there, we're going to find it. When we're conducting interviews, what we do is we focus on 4 behaviors of that big list that I showed you before. We only talk about 4 different behaviors with each interviewee. Otherwise, we'd be talking to them for hours. We find that 4 behaviors fits into about an hour interview. We ask 3 to 4 questions about each behavior, and we use standard opening and closings for each interview. But like I said, our interviewers are able to pull threads. So it's not a standardized interview. We don't say you can ask these questions and only these questions. We give our interviewers a guide to start from, but if they hear something interesting, they're fully capable and able to follow that path and find some information. So I just wanted to give you a few sample questions that we might ask during an interview. So I told you we have standard opening questions. We always open with things like, tell me about how you got to the job that you're in today, and what are your roles and responsibilities in your job? That basically just gets someone talking. You know, it's easy to talk about yourself. And then I give you some sample questions about if we were focusing on that communication behavior, if we want to know about communication at the mine. Here are 4 questions that we might ask. How well informed are you about what goes on at this mine? Describe for me how you get information from your upper management. Tell me how you go about sending information up to your upper management if you think there's something that they need to know about. And tell me about the last time that you got together with other workers and supervisors to discuss problems that were going on. So those are 4 questions that we might ask about communication. And then we would have 3 to 4 questions about 3 other behaviors as part of the interview. And then in the closing, we ask every interviewee this question. If you were king or queen for the day, what 3 things would you change to make working at this mine better or safer? And this is anything. They can tell us anything. And we just provide this list back to mine management. And what we're looking for on this king or queen question is if things are really good at the mine, they can't really think of things to say. Or they'll say really petty things like, oh gosh, it sure would be nice if we had valet parking. That's when you know conditions are good at your mine, that you have a good safety culture, that they're not constantly worried about safety. At mines that don't have great safety cultures and safety is a concern for the miners, that's when we hear things like, oh gosh, they work us too much, I don't want so much overtime, I go to work tired. Or gosh, I really wish that they'd get those roof bolters repaired. You know, they're always breaking down. That's when we get concerned and we know that the safety culture needs to be improved and there are some safety issues. So interviews was our first method that we used. The second method is behavioral anchored rating scales, and I use the word BARS for short because it's a mouthful. And BARS are actually administered in conjunction with interviews. So every person that we interview, they then fill out a behavioral anchored rating scale at the end of their interview. And for each of the 4 behaviors that we talk about in the interview, they fill out a behavioral anchored rating scale for that behavior. And it's a way for us to quantify all of the qualitative information that we got in the interview. It's also a way for the interviewee to express what they just talked about in a different way. So I will give you an example of what a behavioral anchored rating scale looks like. This is actually, I know I'll read it to you because I know in the back it's probably difficult to see. This is the behavioral anchored rating scale for the attention to safety behavior. So at the very top, what we do is we give them the definition for what we mean by attention to safety. This says, attention to safety refers to the characteristics of the work environment, such as the norms, rules, and common understandings that influence site personnel's perception of the importance that the organization places on safety. It includes the degree to which a critical, questioning attitude exists that is directed towards site improvement. So they read the definition of attention to safety. Then below the definition, there are 5 statements about how it could be at the mine regarding attention to safety. The interviewee is to read all 5 of the statements and select the one statement that most accurately describes their mine conditions right then and there. So these examples are oh, sorry. Okay. So these examples are that, individuals at the site believe safety is the #1 priority, and that perspective is reinforced. And if you read each one of the statements, they get progressively worse as they go down. So it could be from, the first one is the ideal, if the safety culture is great, and the bottom one is, we really need to improve. Things are pretty dire here. And we instruct the interviewee to select the one statement that most accurately describes their mind. Another method that we use are behavioral observations, and this is pretty straightforward. We observe what goes on at the mine. So this is everything from meetings, management meetings, to pre-shift meetings with workers, to work processes underground. We like to be sort of a fly on the wall and inobtrusively see what's going on. We do this because we hear a lot of talk from management about, how things work, but we like to make sure that things actually happen the way management tells us they happen. So we stand around and we just observe. And the final method that we use is an organizational and safety culture survey. And this is a paper and pencil survey, and probably what people are most familiar with when we talk about an assessment of some type. So when we conduct the organizational survey, we try to get 100% participation, or we invite 100% of the mine's employees to complete the survey. We strive for 70% completion. We keep hounding people to fill it out until we get about 70% response rate. This survey gives us a lot of great quantitative data to follow up on the qualitative data that we collected during interviews and also during the observations. And the interesting thing about this survey is before we even get to the site, we work with mine management and we let them add some demographic questions to the end of our survey so that they can receive results in a way that would be interesting to them. So if they want to know responses from shift to shift, we can put a demographic question in there asking people, what shift do you work on? Then they can compare across shifts. So we work with them to tailor the survey so that they get the results that they think would be most interesting. The other great thing about this survey is it's a pretty easy method to administer. So if the mine wants to administer safety culture assessments down the line, this would be the easiest thing for them to administer again on their own. So by doing this, we give them a really good baseline so that they could then do this same exact survey a year from now, 3 years from now, and they can compare the results. And the survey actually addresses attitudes that are not included in that first list of behaviors that we looked at, but it addresses some different survey scales, and this is important because I'm going to be giving you some results shortly, but it looks at things like organizational commitment. So how committed are your employees to the organization? Cohesion, coordination of work activities, job satisfaction, all those sorts of things. And I will give you an example of some survey questions that we use. And these 3 questions actually measure employee commitment to the organization. So you see the first question, I talk up this organization to my friends as a great organization to work for. Strongly agree to strongly disagree. The second question, I find that my values and this organization's values are very similar. And the third question, I am proud to tell others that I'm part of this organization. So we have many questions. The survey actually consists of 71 questions, very similar to this, on 7-point Likert scales. So now I wanted to share with you some of the preliminary findings that we've received from the first 3 minds that we've assessed. The first set of results that I'm going to show you are results from that organizational survey that I just presented some questions from. Before I get into the actual bar charts, I want to prepare you for what you're going to see. The next 3 slides have results in bar chart form, and it actually has a result for each scale that I listed up there, each survey scale, and then you'll have 3 bars for each scale. There's one for each of the 3 minds. And I presented the results for the 3 minds because I want to show you that we did receive statistically significant differences across minds on the survey. When we first started the project, people said, only the best minds are going to let you in. Well, we're seeing different things. We're going to some different minds. We're not getting all the same results from our participating minds. So I show you them in that form. But I kind of want you to ignore the 3 separate bars for each survey scale, and I want you to look for trends. So look where the grouping of bars are higher and lower. And we use our rule of thirds. So the scale went from 1 to 7. If the results fall generally above 5, that's good for the across the 3 minds that we've looked at. If the results fall somewhere between 3 and 5, it's mediocre, and if it falls below 3, not so good. So here are some of the results that we're seeing. The first slide deals with some of the communication scales. So communication trust, communication accuracy, interaction between employees, and communication satisfaction. So how satisfied are employees about the communication they're receiving from the organization. If you look at the trending on these, you'll see that most of the bars are falling in the 4 to 5 range. That means, okay, mediocre, they're in that 3 to 5 range. Communication it could be better. It's not horrible, but it could be better. So this is one area that we're seeing across the 3 minds that we've assessed so far, that communication is an area that across the board could probably be improved, especially communication accuracy. You'll see from the 4 communication scales, communication accuracy is the lowest of those 4. That means that employees don't feel that the communication they're receiving from their organization is accurate. The next set of survey results, the next scales are coordination. So how well do work groups work together? Cohesion, how cohesive are the work groups? Hazard, so this is employees' perception of the danger in their job. So how hazardous is their job? And safety. Safety is their basically attention to safety. How important is safety to getting their job done? And you'll see here, the clusters of bars are actually trending higher. Some of them are even above 5. However, coordination still is trending on the low side, down closer to 4. So we're seeing that different work groups in the mine, or employees don't feel that the different work groups in the mine are all that well coordinated. So it's saying that Longwall isn't working well with CM, and Belts isn't working well with Outby, so there's some problems there. The groups aren't working well together. And the last one, job satisfaction. That one's easy. How satisfied are employees with their job? How committed are employees to their organization? And then SQUE, that's that safety-conscious work environment. Here, we're trending between 4 and 5. So still in that mediocre range. And I think that the job satisfaction and organizational commitment, it's important to safety culture. But I think that SQUI is one of the most important aspects to safety culture, and because it trends in that 4 to 5 range, I actually broke the SQUI element down into its separate components, and I wanted to show that to you. So to assess safety-conscious work environment, and we talked about this, is employees' ability to express concerns without feeling that there will be some sort of reprisal or retaliation. And this breaks out into a few different questions. The first is, are you responsible to ID problems? And the thing is that yes, that is great. Across all mines, that averages right around 6. It's actually one of the highest averages that we've gotten to, that we get to any of the survey response or survey questions. And that's a great thing because it's telling us that all miners feel that they're responsible for identifying problems in the mine. However, some of the areas that concern us is that these lower bars on the SQUI, which the second one, which is one of the lowest, is that that statement says, I feel that I can openly challenge management decisions. And a lot of miners are saying that they don't feel that they can challenge the decisions that management makes when it comes to safety. Another thing, if you look at the very last question on here, another one of the lower responses, is that the statement says, in my mind, retaliation is not tolerated. We want this to be sky high. We want miners to feel that they can come forth with any concern and they feel that they will not be retaliated against. Unfortunately, it's one of the lower SQUI items. So we've learned from these 3 mines that this safety-conscious work environment is an area that mines really need to focus on, and they need to show their miners that they can come forth with problems and they won't be retaliated against. And that's how you're going to improve safety culture. I'm also going to show you some of the bars results that we talked about. I gave you this example earlier. I just want to go over how I'm going to present the results. I gave you the example of how they fill out the bars. And depending on where they place their X, we color code them. So if it's in the upper third, that means the mine's doing a great job on that behavior. If it's in the middle third, needs some attention on that behavior. And if it's in the lower third, yeah, we really need to attend to that soon. So when we present the results of the bars, we present them in a graph that looks like this. It's side to side, and obviously the green is the proportion of people that X'd that in the top third, the yellow is the proportion of respondents that X'd in the middle third, and the red is the proportion of the respondents that X'd in the bottom. What we want to see when we're looking at these bars results is a lot of green. We want a lot of green on these bars. So here are the bars results across all 3 mines that we've conducted so far. And if you look quickly down, and remember we're looking for the most green falls under the behavior problem identification and resolution. Now this goes with what we just saw on those SQUI results. Miners' ability to identify problems and resolve problems is pretty high, and miners are saying, you know what, my mind is good at finding and fixing problems. So that's good. But some of the areas where the green is lesser, such as goal setting and prioritization, is an area that we think mines need to focus on. So setting safety goals and prioritizing safety above production goals. And you'll see there's all those other areas. I don't have time to talk about all of them. But I want to close today with some practical application that you can take home to your minds. And these are just some of the strengths and weaknesses that we have observed across the 3 mines that we have assessed so far. So I wanted to start of some of the strengths. So these are some of the markers of greater emphasis on safety that we've seen. So these are the things that those mines that we think are doing a good job of placing a lot of emphasis on safety are doing, and that you might want to try to incorporate into your mines if you're not already doing them. So the first thing that we're seeing is that some mines that place a great deal of emphasis on safety, they have safety goals that are concrete, clearly articulated and retained by all of their employees. So they're straightforward and simple safety goals, and I think we heard some of those today. The perfect zero, for example.
Can you wrap it up in 1 minute?
I can. Then we have the, another emphasis of, or another marker of a greater emphasis on safety is the consistency between management's espoused values and their actions. So is management acting to support what they're saying? So if your management is saying that safety is our #1 goal and our #1 value, when they're talking to their employees, are they talking consistently about safety and not about production? We've seen that in some mines, and that's a great thing. Another thing that we've seen in mines that have a great emphasis on safety is implementation of additional safety measures. So this means employing things or doing things in your mine above and beyond regulation or above and beyond mandates. So putting in tracking systems before they were mandated, using roof and rib mesh even though it's not necessary or not in your roof plan, using roof and rib bolting, and even going above and beyond on safety training. So, not just doing what the state and federal says you have to do, but employing additional safety training. And I hate to end on a sour note, but I also wanted to present some of the markers of mines that place lesser emphasis on safety and what we're seeing from those mines. The first thing that we see from some of these mines is frequent change, yet an informal change management. So these are mines that are constantly making changes. And these could be minor changes, such as the date when they're going to issue their, this could be the date on which they're going to issue their bonus. They change it from, oh, you're going to get it December 12th, now you're going to get it December 26th, now you're going to get it January 3rd. Those all the way down to more important changes, such as scheduling and leadership. So they make these changes frequently, but they don't have a good change management system. So they're not enacting these changes in an effective way. So things are happening such as their employees are finding out about these changes before their management is, or their foremen are. Another marker of lesser emphasis on safety is a lack of a safety-conscious work environment. And we talked about that when I showed you the SQUI results. Employees are feeling that management doesn't want to hear their safety concerns, and employees fear that they will be directly retaliated against if they can express concerns. And finally, a marker of lesser emphasis on safety is inconsistencies between espoused values and actions. So we've been to mines where the management is telling us, oh, safety's #1, that's what we care about, we don't care about production, all we care about is safety. And then management is doing things like enacting mandatory overtime. They're employing lofty production bonuses. So maybe you can get a 50% bonus for production, but only a 3% bonus for safety. Or they're initiating unrealistic timelines. If you can move our longwall in 7 days, we'll give you this huge bonus. So they say the safety is important, but they're doing things that show to the miners that really production is their most important thing. So that's all I have for today. Thank you.